Hello, hosts and travelers. Welcome to the podcast, Hosting Your Home. Each day around the world, millions of guests stay in other people's homes using the Airbnb platform. Debbie Herdert looks for stories that come from these connections to share them with you. Now listen in as we hear stories that teach us the human side of hosting your home.
Welcome to another episode of Hosting Your Home. Today we're going to talk with Kathy Peterman, who's a really interesting and fun person. She has so many interests. I wanted to interview her because she does have so many interests, and I wanted to know how she brings them into her Airbnb hosting experience. Kathy is a vegan and a minimalist. She's a blogger. You'll find a link to her blog called My Best Year on our website. She offers webinars about veganism and minimalism, and she's an amateur photographer. You're going to hear two terms relating to Airbnb that we haven't used before. One is house rules, which you may be aware of, and they're simply that. There's a space on the Airbnb platform under listings. There is a space where the host can input house rules. Generally, they're pretty easy. Things like take your shoes off when you come inside, no smoking in the house, various things like that. The other term is verified ID. When you sign up to use Airbnb as a new guest, you need to be verified. Airbnb wants to know that you are who you are, and of course, we as hosts want to know that you are who you are as well. So you need to put in a scanned copy of your driver's license or your passport or something like that. So let's get on with our interview. We'll talk again in a little bit. Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
We're in the home of Kathy Peterman in Northeast Portland.
Southeast. I'm just south of Burnside.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me over, and thank you for having that lovely lunch, too. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So Kathy is an Airbnb host, and you've been hosting for 2 years?
In July, it'll be 2 years, yes.
Years. And you have a very interesting approach to being an Airbnb host. Can you tell us a little bit about how you operate?
Yeah, well, number one, I have a 3-bedroom home, and I live here by myself. And when people come stay here, it's just one room with a private bath that I have on Airbnb. And in the beginning, I did not want to say anything about being vegan because I was very worried that it would scare people away, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Then I had an episode where I was renting out the whole house and away, and I came back and someone who had rented it had left hamburger in the pan and in the refrigerator and 1.5 dozen eggs and some milk and stuff like that. And then the other thing that they had done was put their trash underneath my recycling and put bottles that had a lot of water with the caps on in the recycle bin, etc. Mm-hmm. So for me, this sort of confronted a couple things that are dear to me. One was I thought I'd be fine with people cooking meat in my house. And I was able to realize I've been vegan for 5 years. And although that's something I used to do, it just was gross to me, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And especially the fact that they hadn't cleaned up fully made it not so nice. And then I also am very eco-conscious. And so I had asked them to please just put your trash and recycling. Don't worry about separating it. I'll take care of that because everywhere that you go, recycling is different. So I don't expect people to know that. But I asked them to leave it in the garage. And so anyways, what I learned from that is I better start getting clear in my listing who is my ideal guest in my home.
Excellent. And so how did you go about doing that?
Well, I added something that says I have a veg-friendly kitchen. Oh. And that I don't allow the cooking of meat, fish, or fowl. So,
do you have your listing title to reflect something of that nature?
I presently don't.
So you filter your guests by what you have in your description.
By my description and my house rules. So one of the house rules is no cooking of meat, fish, or fowl. I'm okay, even though I'm vegan, with other people like cooking an egg or a grilled cheese sandwich, or people could put a sandwich that had meat in the refrigerator. Mm-hmm. That's okay by me. Mm-hmm. It's just the cooking of meat that is a small thing that I ask they not do in my home.
I see. And then that little nuance. So I'm thinking about, well, for our guests, let me just say that you gave me a tour of the house, and you gave me a tour of the inside of your cupboards, and you showed me the inside of your refrigerator, where you have shelves that are labeled for guests, mm-hmm. and that some past guests had left some Thai food that probably has meat in it. Mm-hmm. So that was okay for them to do.
This is the first time that's happened where they left something and never discussed it. So I'm going to probably just donate it to a homeless person is what I've decided.
Yeah. That's a good solution.
Yeah. And what I would say is probably 90% of people don't use my kitchen. I list in my listing that you can use the kitchen, and that I've got a variety of appliances like a juicer, a food processor, a dehydrator, Vitamix, that people are welcome to use those mm-hmm. things. Mm-hmm. But 90% don't even use the kitchen, and even those that do might, probably half that use the kitchen of that 10%, maybe make a cup of coffee or toast or have some yogurt.
So then to backtrack a little bit, you have the bedroom and the bathroom upstairs that you rent out. Do you mind if I ask you what you charge for those rooms?
In the slower season, I've been charging $53, and when we're now in the busier season, like late May through September, I normally charge $63 with a $10 cleaning fee. Mm-hmm.
And the guests have access to your kitchen.
Yes.
They have their own bathroom. Mm-hmm. Do they have access to the living area, the TV? And
this I label as shared. So some people are really good at sharing, and others really like a lot of privacy. I let them take the lead, and I just follow on that. But I've learned also I'm going to just keep living my life and hang out in my living room if that's what's up for me that day, and just, chat with them if they want to chat, or at least say hi. If they don't want to say too much, let them be.
And then if they wanted to curl up in their room and watch TV, or they probably have I didn't notice if you have a TV in there.
There's no TV in there, but so many people bring a tablet or
their laptop.
Something else.
Yeah, so you offer Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So they can stream.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. So how does that work for you to share your living space?
I personally really like it, and I know in the beginning my family was quite concerned, like, what? Have you gone off your rocker there, Mom? Yeah. And it was partially because of them that I started doing verified ID, just to be able to tell them I was doing a little something.
Sake. You are really trusting of people, aren't you?
I am quite trusting, although I do appreciate having verified ID. And I'm also really clear that I can say no to a guest if they just don't feel right. I once had somebody with a turban on snarling in their picture that was wanting to book that night, and I think he was even asking kind of late in the afternoon or evening for that night. No introduction, no history. So I've learned to say no thank you to anyone that doesn't feel like they're going to be a good match for my house.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any issues at all?
I have had 110 or so stays at my home. Many of those might be just one night. Some of them might be for a whole month. And out of all of those, I had one woman with a bad attitude.
Wow.
And she was here a lot, so it just was somewhat unpleasant, but she left my place clean. She followed the basic rules that I had. Otherwise, I normally really like people, and then I love some people. And occasionally there's some people like, not really seeing a connection or something that we have in common, but that's okay.
I want to ask you about your personal story and how, with your personal story, you came to be an Airbnb host.
I went on a trip to India in 2012, and while I was away, I had just enough time to reflect and realize that although I loved my job, who I was as a person had been changing and kind of going off to this side, and what they needed for me to do in the job had been going the opposite direction. Like basically the gap was getting bigger. And I was getting ready to turn 55, and I worked for a healthcare organization where if you've worked for them long enough, that is the earliest that you can retire. So I thought I'd just call them, hear a number, probably laugh, hang up, and work for 10 more years. That's how I thought it would go. And I did laugh because the number is very low when you retire early. But I just kept thinking, but for 10 more years, I would have that money. And I've been a home health nurse in the past. And I know a lot of people, when they retire, they have a health crisis. A partner passes away. Things can happen. Not that that happens to everybody by any means, but I'm just vividly aware that, it's a different time in people's lives. So I made the decision after doing multiple spreadsheets and trying to guess when I might die and when money would come in from any point. I basically took 2 or 3 weeks and said, okay, I'm doing this. And at that time, everybody at work was saying, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go on all these vacations and stuff? Well, while I do travel occasionally, it's less common just due to the money. But I told them I'm going to take a whole year to not answer that question of what are you going to do. I felt like I needed to reconnect with myself, kind of even figure out who I was after working 10 and 12-hour long days for many years, and kind of frying out my own adrenal glands, starting to have even some health issues. To be honest with you, part of going vegan was because I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic. And so it's been one of the ways that I've been able to turn that around.
And why Airbnb?
Well, I heard about it through some acquaintances and kind of had an interest in it.
So was this after your year of pause?
Yes.
And travel?
Yes, I had paused, and I realized when a year was up, I'm like, okay, now what am I going to do? I actually started doing different little experiments during that year, like decluttering my home and starting a blog, and so...
Was this the beginning of your minimalist lifestyle as well?
It was a start to that.
Okay.
I think probably the biggest turning point there was walking the Camino de Santiago, 500-mile trek through France and Spain that I walked in 2013 during the summer. And so that was a big change for me because I spent 2 months abroad with only the things that fit in my backpack. And I loved it. Life was so simple. There was less stuff to worry about. You got up and you had, 2 or 3 outfits. You didn't have 25, 95, 200 to pick from. And I kind of like that simplicity. So I've been going more and more that direction myself, just asking myself what brings me joy, whether it's stuff on my calendar, relationships with other people, how I spend my time, or what I have physical things around me. Just trying to simplify and make sure those are things that bring me joy.
Were you living in this house at that time?
Yes.
So in 2012 you retired?
2012 I went to India and then retired.
Oh, you went to India first, then you retired. And then in 2013 you walked the Camino.
Yes.
And in 2014 you began your Airbnb?
Yes. Yeah. I had taken a trip where my daughter, her husband, and their child, and myself were going up to Seattle and then flying from Seattle to California. They wanted to go to a concert is why we were doing this.
Okay.
And I looked at hotels and realized, okay, we're going to need 2 hotel rooms, but I was due to watch the baby while they went to the concert. And so just looking at the pricing and stuff, I thought, this might be that time where it makes sense to look and see what Airbnb offers. So sure enough, we stayed at Airbnb. It was closer to the airport because actually that airport's south of Seattle, quite a distance there. And while they were away, the baby cried the entire time.
Oh.
She just wasn't used to her mama being away.
Uh-huh.
And I was holding her, and she knew me, but she just wasn't having much of that. So I was really grateful to not be in a hotel, to be in a large home that had 3 bedrooms and a big TV and a kitchen and a yard where I could bounce her on my hip and walk around. And, even just taking her outside kind of shifted her focus and stuff like that. And then for me, it was doing the first evaluation that it says, would you like to become a host? And I had kind of been thinking about it before that. So on July 1st, 2014, I signed up, and by July 3rd, I had my very first guest
Oh my
come
goodness.
stay. Yeah.
So you signed up, uploaded pictures, did all that stuff, and almost immediately got a booking.
Yeah. And then it was peak time, so I basically was pretty busy for, at least 3 or 4 months after that.
Did you, as you were hosting in the beginning, did you feel your approach to hosting and your guests change?
One of the things is I started with a very simple room that had a white IKEA bedspread on it, no artwork, no accent wall, no desk. And yet I was able to start off and had people come stay. I remember the first night that people stayed, it was right around 4th of July, and I thought, it says it's quiet here, but it's not going to be very quiet tonight. But that couple had been out camping. So for them, this was a real treat to be able to have a washer and dryer they could use and a bed to sleep on instead of their car or a tent. I quickly learned that it was, you don't have to be fancy, but I took the money that I made and made the room nicer and was able to say, how was your stay? Is there anything I could do better for the future? Any recommendations, since you've been living in this room, especially people who stay a little longer are great folks to give you feedback on what you might want to change.
Yeah. Plus long-term stays, those people use the place differently than the short-term guests. So I just want to compliment you on how organized you are. I love the guest guidebook that you've got in the room and how clear you are with your guests. There's no question for them about what is okay to do and what is not okay to do, and I think that's really a wonderful thing. Plus, you've done it in a colorful and easy to understand way.
Well, thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the money a little bit. What do you do with the money that you get from your bookings, and what kind of a change has it made for you?
Well, as I mentioned before, that retiring early, there's not, you get less money. And so for me, it allows me to pay for health insurance, for one thing. And it has also allowed me to start my own business
where the blogging kind of led to me leading groups online, doing decluttering and raw cleansing by eating raw foods and just kind of decluttering the body is what I tell some folks. Mm-hmm. And then that evolved into leading a group called My Best Year. So having the money that I was able to put into that to like buy a webinar program, mm-hmm. to make my website how I want it to be. It basically has allowed me to do that, and all of these things have allowed me to still be quote-unquote retired.
Yeah.
I still refer to myself that way, but I have so many hobbies.
Yes.
Most people would not really call me retired.
Yeah, I wouldn't call you retired either. So with Airbnb income supporting another work area for you to develop, then that now has become a money-making business for you as well? Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, that's really great.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of how many nights a year you book?
Number one, hardly ever block a night. I pretty much have it wide open unless I think I'm going to be away, which I haven't had that much time lately that I have been away. I might block 2 weeks out of the whole year, mm-hmm. and I am probably booked 80 to 90% of the time.
Fabulous.
Yeah. There's definitely our busier season in Portland, and then there's also changes that happen just whether it's with the economy, supply and demand, etc.
Why don't you tell us about your recycling and minimalist lifestyle and the eco-conscious behavior that you try to draw out of your guests?
So as I mentioned in the beginning, I didn't want to tell people I was vegan, nor did I, in the very beginning, I didn't have a trash project, but I began to have one after I started Airbnb. And I'd taken a class called Less is More, where it was just a beginning introduction on how we could consume less, recycle more, have less trash and stuff like that. So
can I ask you, were you triggered by the additional trash that you got from guests? Lack of recycling? It's just something that you're interested in, and so you just are following that.
Yeah. Actually, before I went on the Camino, I had taken that Less is More class.
Okay.
And when I came back, I started measuring my trash by taking pictures of it each month just to see trash and recycling, how much I had of each.
You were taking pictures of your trash?
Yes. Now,
okay.
Now, I just want to say that in Portland, at least, we have curbside composting.
Oh, yes, that's true.
So our trash is dry, not with
you were taking
chunks
pictures of your compost?
No. But I was taking pictures just to kind of see what is my usual amount of trash. And then from there it led to, okay, if I'm buying, let's just say something like salad in a plastic container, is there a way to get it without one? Okay, you can buy a head of lettuce. Or I could buy the curry that I used in our soup today and get a jar and a label and a lid, or I could go buy it in bulk. So I just started looking at what I was creating and how I could be more mindful and create less trash and less recycling even. A lot of people think, well, isn't recycling good? Yes, it is, but all of that takes resources to generate and create it. So if we can recycle less, that's actually a good thing. So yes, I took pictures of my trash.
That's pretty funny.
And I still do, because on Facebook I will post and show other people. The very first year I did this, my goal was to fill up one of the small Portland, I think it's 20-gallon trash containers for the year. Then the next year it was to fill up a half of one. And now this year my goal is to have 2 gallons of trash in the whole year. Most people think in a week
and
or
a day.
In a month.
How are you going to gauge that?
Well, I have jars over here I could show you.
So you just keep it here so that you can...
Yeah.
And so you have no debris then? That's amazing.
So I compost everything that is made of material that will compost.
Right.
And I recycle paper, plastic, metal, those glass at the curb. Not at the curb, I actually bring it in myself. But then the things that don't fit into any of those categories are what is trash. And I put that in separate little jars of my own. Normally I was putting it in a container. This year, because the goal is so small, I'm making it very visual where I can see my little jars.
I'm trying to think what that could be. If you compost and if you recycle the other stuff, what's left?
Well, I'll show you.
Glass? You couldn't do glass recycles.
It's mostly plastic. And so it's plastic that comes in food packaging. And so this is my month. Sorry, you guys can't see this.
I'm taking a picture of it. It's going to go on the website.
So this is May so far.
Wow.
So, it's potato chip wrappers. It's the top to the kombucha. It is ice cream. Did you know that frozen containers are all embedded with so much plastic that you can't recycle them?
No,
They're not paper. It's a mascara wand. And
amazing.
Now, this year I may not achieve my goal. I truly take this on as a fun project. I know to some people it sounds like both the veganism and this could be things that are just like I'm Debbie Downer and limiting myself constantly.
Now, knock off the Debbie Downer stuff.
Not Debbie, okay.
So but you don't expect your Airbnb clients to do this?
This is not
Do they even know that you're doing this?
This is not my guest trash.
Okay.
I keep it separate.
Okay.
What I tell them is I do have something in their book, and it's also hanging in the kitchen, called My Trash Project.
Okay.
And it says what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and then the 2 ways they could help me is to make sure the compost stuff goes in the little compost bin, and to consider using less plastic.
Okay.
But I say you're on vacation. You need to be comfortable. You need to just do whatever works for you. This is my project. It's just a way of letting people know that it's there. And some people never talk to me about it. And other people, that's why they book here.
Really?
I've had several people that said, oh my gosh, I saw about your project. The things that I was worried about turning people off have actually turned on people to come here.
Yes. And I can see that would be especially true of the vegan thing. Mm-hmm. But this is a little beyond what I would have.
Right. But I've had other people who came here just because of the eco-consciousness. That is people amazing. Who knew what soap nuts were and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my gosh, there's other people out there.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So what are you getting out of being an Airbnb hostess?
I would say for me, one of the biggest pluses is I really enjoy meeting the people. And not every single one, like I said before, but I've made some really good friendships out of this. My 3rd guest that stayed here about 3 weeks. She's in her early 20s, from France, was here on a little work scholarship type thing, and had been originally staying in a hotel where basically she got no socialization at all. Mm-hmm. And when she came here, it was just an opportunity for both of us to find out about each other's culture, to, talk about all kinds of things, to go on walks together. She ended up really loving Back to the Future, and we happened to have one of those movies in the park the night before she left, which was Back to the Future. So we were able to go to that together.
Oh, that's nice.
And I want to go walk another Camino, and I had no idea, but now I know the path that I want to walk, and it actually starts somewhere near where she lives, so I may get to go see her over in her home, which would be cool.
And so are you using Airbnb as a guest more now too?
A little bit, I have. Yeah. Here again, I haven't traveled a huge amount, but when I do, I always consider Airbnb first. I haven't seen a hotel in a while.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This was just a real fun topic. You're a fun lady. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I know I did. And one thing that I didn't mention earlier was not only did Kathy allow me to chat with her about her lifestyle and her business, but she also fed me lunch. And I had a really delicious salad and a soup that she said was creamed carrot curry soup. And oh my gosh, it was just delicious. So a couple of things I took away from this interview with Kathy. One is that out of 110 days, she had only one person that she felt had kind of a bad attitude. That's really good odds. The other thing that I would like to point out about this is that as a vegan and a minimalist, she used her own interest in life to draw to her the kind of guests that would appreciate her lifestyle. So if you are a host or you're thinking about hosting, think about what makes you different. How do you stand out from other people? And use that to your advantage. I think you'll find, like Kathy has, that it works really well. Thanks for tuning in this time, guys, and I look forward to chatting with you again. Take care.
Would you like to sing a song?
Yes, please sing.
The best one is Rubber Body. La 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 la. You like that song?
Yeah, beautiful song.
Thank you. Now it's time to rest. Now I'm going to go sleep.